This is the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Good morning, everyone. I will call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting to order, and it's Tuesday, March 19, 2019. Okay, press your roll call buttons. My gosh, the snowbirds are back. You can tell by the short sleeves. Some anyway.
Press your phone. There, listen.
Okay, 25 members present, 2 absent.
Has the open meeting statement been legally fulfilled, Clerk?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Please stand for silent meditation and then a pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, you have the agenda before you. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda? Mr. Moore?
Move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Moore for approval. Mr. Zog?
I'll second that.
And a second by Mr. Zog. Any questions? Discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries 25-0.
Likewise, we had the minutes of the February 19th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion for approval of those minutes? Ms. Lair?
I so move.
There is a motion by Supervisor Lair for approval. Mr. Nygaard? Second. And a second by Mr. Nygaard. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Thank you. Okay, we go into number 7, which is ordinances and amendments to the General Code of Ordinance. A is 2019-667, amendment to Chapter 34. Petition number Z-001-19. Town of Little Wolf. Stephen C. Phaser for a zoning map amendment from AE District to RR-O District to create a 2-acre parcel. Good morning, Brian.
Morning. So Mr. Fazer is looking at creating this 2-acre parcel to allow for someone to build a house on. Now, this is within farm preservation, so you'll see that it's that rural residential overlay district, which is the residential district that we have for farm pres. And you'll see that it does meet the minimum lot size of 2 acres.
Is there a motion for approval, please? Mr. Zog?
I move we approve that change.
There's a motion by Mr. Zog. Mr. Nygaard? Second. And a second by Mr. Nygaard. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Item B is 2019-668, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-002-19, the Town of Farmington, Jeffrey S. and Susan K. Melville for a zoning map amendment from PBRF District to AWT District on approximately 0.44 acres.
So the reason for this rezone is similar to the last one in that they're looking to create a buildable parcel This one is not inside of farm preservation. You'll see that they're going to EWT. What they're looking at doing here is they need to rezone this part up on top here to be the same zoning district below, so that they can combine it and make it all one parcel, so that they can build on it.
Mr. Murphy? Gary?
Move to approve 2019-668 amendment.
You heard the motion by Mr. Gerald Murphy for approval. Is there a second? Supervisor Quistman.
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor Quistman. Discussion? Questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Item C is 2019-669, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-003-19, Town of Bear Creek, Jessica A. Schrader for a zoning map amendment from AE District to RC-0 District on approximately 1 acre.
Mrs. Schrader is looking at starting a business on this corner lot. She's looking at starting a licensed daycare facility. And being that this is within farm preservation, she would need to rezone into our commercial district, which is rural commercial overlay.
Mr. Fedowitz?
Mr. Chairman, having been being on planning and zoning and looking at the site and listening to the discussion at our meeting, I so approve.
There's a motion by Mr. Fedowitz for approval. Do we have a second? Mr. Rowan?
I'd like to second that, please.
And second by Mr. Rowan. Discussion? Questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Okay, we'll go down to number 8, resolutions. A is resolution number 40, 18-19, outdoor recreational aids.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Waupaca County hereby authorizes John D. Francis, Director of the Waupaca County Parks and Recreation Department, to act on behalf of the Waupaca County to submit an application to the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for any financial aid that may be available, sign documents, take necessary action to undertake, direct, and complete their approval projects.
Okay, we'll need a motion for approval. Mr. Zog?
I move we approve that resolution.
There's a motion for approval by Mr. Zog. Supervisor Golding?
I second it.
And a second. Discussion? Questions? Supervisor Craig?
Yes. Could I please ask Mr. Francis a question?
Yes, you may.
Okay, my question is, I noticed when I was at a Parks and Rec meeting that there was perhaps, because this resolution says acquiring lands, and I thought at first it might just be, you know, to get the grant funds, but I heard there was talk of purchasing some more land. So this covers that? Is there anything in the works for that?
No, this wouldn't have anything to do with us about purchasing land for parks or the county in any which way. It's, it just comes down to, like, if there was a snowmobile bridge that needed to be put in or replaced, the county actually owns those bridges when it goes through that grant program. So we would have to, I would have to run that project and sign the documents for that. Actual purchase of the bridge and whatever would be signed by Dave. So, but yeah, we can't go out and purchase land or anything. When they're talking about acquiring land, that's like easements for trails and whatnot. So we haven't done that in the county as far as purchasing easements for trails.
Thank you.
And that's your question, Pat?
Yes.
Good. Any other questions? Discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries 25 to 0.
Okay, let's go down to B, resolution number 4118-19, Work Zone Awareness Week.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that the week of April 8th through April 12th, 2019 be designated as Work Zone Awareness Week in Waupaca County.
Like a motion for approval, Supervisor Fleece.
Make that motion.
There's a motion for approval by Supervisor Fleece. Mr. Jonley,
I second that motion.
and a second by Mr. Jonley. Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries 25 to 0.
Item C is resolution number 4218-19, a donation acceptance.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors accepts the donation request to support families in Waupaca County for the Waupaca County Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $5,000 from the Aberdaris SOW Foundation Incorporated.
Mr. Johnson,
Move to approve resolution 42.
motion by Supervisor Johnson for approval. Supervisor Craig,
I second that motion.
and a second by Supervisor Craig. Any questions, discussion? Let's vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25 to 0.
Okay, we're down to reports. Solid Waste Department. Mr. Francis and Taylor Sorensen, the recycling coordinator, are here for a presentation. I have to say that a few months ago, I had Taylor Sorensen on my radio program in Shawano for an hour. Fantastic. She should go on the road with that. That's really good. She had Shawano County calling in for questions, believe it or not. So, and I heard so many comments about your presentation. Super job. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just wanted to do a little talk today, give you an update on some of the things that have been happening in solid waste and recycling in the last year or two. So I was just going to focus on one major thing coming up here. So if I can figure this thing out. There we go. First, I just want to touch on our department structure. We're a relatively small department. We have a couple line sorters, a few other contracted folks up there, and then we have six county employees. Some of us are split between parks and solid waste. So that's our structure. Just double tap there. What I want to talk about here first, though, is some recent changes. In September of 2016, the DNR came and did an inspection on our tipping floor, and this is the tipping floor here. And they ruled that we were violating some of their rules about the trash that was tipped onto that floor was not getting removed within 24 hours. It has to be into a container and stored in that manner or on the way to the landfill. So we were having a hard time keeping up, especially in the summer when everyone's cleaning everything out all the time and houses getting torn down. Hard to keep up. So we looked at a bunch of different ways to address that problem. One, we were looking at, geez, can we just throw more man hours at it? Add a body, come in with a second shift basically to clean up after the customers are done, which is really expensive, and you would need 2 people to do that because it takes 2 people to do the compactor, so it wasn't ideal. We looked at a bunch of different options. We took and did some tours of various other facilities to see what they were doing so they could keep up, and came up with a few ideas. So one of the things is, this is the infamous hole in the wall that everyone talks about. everything that came into that tipping floor got picked up by a loader and pushed through that hole in the wall into the compactor. So it's a slow process, and it was somewhat dangerous, especially if there's customers around, because if you pick up big boards or whatever and pack them through that hole, sometimes they would pop back and pieces of them would fly back out into the tipping floor area. So you couldn't really do it while there was customers in there. And it was, you know, so you'd have the materials handler sitting outside waiting, you know, while until a customer was done. And on those busy days, you don't have a time when that can happen. So just talk a little bit about what we were using. We did have a big old loader, but it had a tiny little bucket so you could fit into that hole in the wall, you know. So you were constantly running over stuff. If you ran into the pile, your tires were up on things. It wasn't ideal. You needed a lot of room to maneuver that thing. That's the compactor. Everything that came through that hole in the wall fell down into there, and then there's a big ram in there that packs it into a compactor box, and I got a picture of that next. But it takes time to cycle through that. Sometimes there'd be jams, and that thing in itself was a lot of maintenance problems. We had issues with the electrical and the hydraulics. They kept overpressuring, and spend a lot of money getting people out there to fix that stuff. Actually bent the ram in there after it was only a few years old. Replaced the guide bars and everything. We were spending a lot of money on that thing, and like I say, it was slow. And these are the compactor boxes. So these things are basically buckled to the back of that compactor. And then the problem with these, a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but a fair amount of times, especially in the winter, when you pack all that trash in there, send it to the landfill, and only half of it or a small portion of it would come out of that box. So then they bring you back a box that's already almost full, and we got to dig it out and store it in the tipping floor until it thaws out, and we can chisel it all out of there. It was a real pain in the butt. So and every time you change those boxes out, you had to drag that thing. That's why we needed a bigger loader. Basically, it's got these small wheels on it. You drag it out, park it till the guy comes to pick it up with a hauler, and then you drag a new one in, so you're constantly wearing on the concrete in those boxes. It was not ideal. So what did we do? We went very similar to what Portage County is doing. We went with open top semi-trailers, and I'll show you a picture of that. One of the first things we had to do was add another garage door. So this garage door was added into the tipping floor. Relatively inexpensive to do. What that gives us is two places where we can bring in semi-trailers. So when we have one full, they can bring in an empty one on one side, and then they'll pull out the full one. So we've always got two that are open, two doors. And this is a picture of the semi-trailer. So they're just they're pretty much full-size semi-trailer, but they have a walking floor in them, so they dump. They don't have to lift up to dump at the landfill. That floor pushes all the trash out, and that's the way a lot of folks are going. It seems to work pretty well. We've never had a truck come back with garbage in it. So some of the benefits to this. Let's see. Yeah, with this open top thing, as you can see, we had to get a different loader. I got a picture of that here. That's the loader. It's a telehandler Bobcat. A lot smaller machine than the old loader. A lot cheaper too. It was about half the price of the Volvo loader we had before. But in order to be able to see what you're doing in there while you're packing that trailer full, we installed some cameras. There's one on each end there, so you can see inside of that trailer from a monitor in the loader. And it works pretty good. It's a little learning curve there for our handler. Just, seeing yourself in a camera and based on, trying to operate your machine based on what you're seeing from a remote camera is kind of different, So took a little bit, but he's a real good operator, and he's getting better at packing the loads tight. So one of the biggest benefits we have from this whole process is time. Back to the tipping floor here. and it's empty. The old compactor, if everything went well, didn't have any malfunctions, it would take about 45 minutes to load a compactor box. With the new trailers, we could load one in about 10 minutes. And the compactor boxes held on average between 7 and 8 tons. So you're paying to haul 7 to 8 tons to the landfill, where the new trailers were averaging between 12 and 15 tons, and we think we can get that higher yet. It's a lot of it's dependent on what kind of material comes in. You know, if you get a whole house load of styrofoam coming, your loads are going to be a little light. But if we have a decent normal stream of material, I think we can get our loads a little heavier, and that's where packing the trailer gets a little, where the operator gets a little better at it. So it's almost twice as much material that we're hauling per pole of these, and it only takes a third of the time to load. So, and another part of that is benefit is safety. Our guy can get in there and actually be loading while someone is dumping over there. I mean, we try not to as long as it isn't too busy, but he can get in there with that small loader. It cramps steers. It's got 4-wheel steering. You can whip right around in one lane in there, and you're not pressing things through a hole in them. Also, things aren't flying around. So it is a safety thing, and we're a lot more efficient. We've been able to keep that floor clean, and we've been compliant ever since. So it's a good thing. We're getting better at it, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. And with that, I'll turn it over to Taylor, and she wanted to talk a little bit about recycling.
Hi everybody, my name is Taylor Sorensen and I'm the recycling coordinator. I took over for Debbie Krogwald last February, so I've been in this role for just over a year. I just wanted to talk to you about our recycling tonnages, numbers, and then a little bit about the recycling markets, because I'm sure as some of you have heard, the markets aren't great. So to start, the recycling tonnages in 2017, Waupaca County diverted 5,512 tons from landfills just through our recycling program. So that's really great. It's definitely over what the state requires from us by a per capita basis. Recycling tonnages for 2018, I don't have all of my numbers yet, but so far what's been reported is 3,913 tons, and once I get all of the numbers, I'm sure that we'll meet that 5,500 tons from last year, and we'll probably even exceed that. So we're doing really great at recycling our material. To move on to revenue, in 2018, the revenue from recyclables was $42,118, which was just about $9,000 short from what we had budgeted for. And the reason for this decrease in revenue is due to the current recycling market conditions. In July of 2017, China announced their national sword policy. This policy limits or outright bans the importation of certain recyclables, including some paper and plastics, and that started in January of 2018. Now, we as a county, we're not sending our recyclables to China. We send all of our things locally. I think the furthest recyclables go is Michigan. So we're not sending our stuff to China, but larger companies who were previously sending their materials to China are now having to flood these local markets. So we're having a lot of supply and no demand, which is really driving down the price. Just a specific example of this in our own program would be mixed paper. Mixed paper would be considered like magazines, junk mail, office paper, newspaper, etc. And so in May, the price of mixed paper went down to $0 a ton, so we are essentially just giving that material away for free. In other parts of the country, they were actually having to pay to get rid of that material. And in comparison, in 2017, before National Sword was put into place, we were getting paid $75 to $60 a ton for that mixed paper. So in September, we started to get $5 a ton, so I mean, not great, but still making a little bit of revenue, and it had stayed steady at that $5 a ton until actually this month we're back down to $0 a ton. So we've been using the same broker for 25 years, and this is the lowest pricing he's ever seen, and he's been in this business for that long. And that alone was a $12,000 loss in our revenue stream that we were expecting to see. So in 2019, what are we kind of doing about this? We've budgeted our revenue more conservatively, and by doing that, we were trying to cut down on our expenses wherever we could. I've also been attending several conferences. I received a grant to go down to St. Louis to a national recycling conference, and they focused a lot on markets down there because we're seeing these issues all over the country. It's not just here in Waupaca County. And they talked a lot about how markets are trying to be more developed domestically. So just an example, Green Bay Packaging is opening a mill here in the future, and they're going to be taking in recycled feedstock. So we are lucky that we are in a paper-intense area, so hopefully we can start moving that material and making some money. Another solution that we found was our glass. We started selling our glass locally here to Fulks Brothers. They're paying less per ton than our old buyers, but they're not charging for shipping, so we're actually making more money. So we are making some changes to try and help to make it so we can still recycle as much as possible.
And I guess with that, if anybody has some questions for us, fire away.
Questions? Comments? You can see what I mean when these two experts up here in their field, and Taylor is on the radio and other counties are calling her. That's more information than I ever knew. So thank you so very much. It's just an excellent report.
Thanks.
New highway facility, Mr. Byersdorf is in the audience and coming forth, please.
Good morning, happy Tuesday.
In line.
I wore my orange shirt today, not that I needed a presentation shirt to wear, but I decided to wear my Waupaca County work zone awareness shirt. So,
and a little trucker collar.
Yes. So, our new highway facility project again is progressing month after month. It's a great project to be associated with. The support that we are receiving from your level to my management level to Myron's contractors and management staff has been phenomenal. Just yesterday we had our Monday morning progress meeting, and it was pretty neat to see what has been going on inside of the building. I don't have any drone videos today to fly around and look at what's going on. I would say over this last month, the majority of the progress has been inside the building, the majority of it. There still is exterior stuff that we'll go through in our packet, but overall, everything is pretty much behind closed walls that's been accomplished. So page one, a little bit of the executive summary. The Spancrete retaining walls have been being erected. The administrative building has been going up. There's a lot of different shells that occur when you're building a facility. And you wouldn't think of it, but initially the big steel crane showed up and put in the big gigantuate steel beams. And then the next steel contractor rolled in and put up the drywall studs, which are made out of steel. And as soon as that's done, then the mason's coming through, which was looking to start early next week, and put the third level of the exterior walls on in the administrative area. Some of these photos are already outdated to the point where this, if you scroll up a little bit, that bottom photo there is the big rail that goes parallel with the ground. That now has its big rails on top of it for the crane trolley to roll on top of. You can see an earth floor that's in that photo. Just recently, now the concrete floors are poured. Before the concrete floors could get poured inside the building, they had to put the underground plumbing, air lines, electrical lines, oil lines. Then the subgrade got prepped. They put in a very thick green colored plastic membrane to keep the floors from sweating. Then they put on the 2 inches of insulation. Then on top of the insulation, they put the in-floor heating tubes, because we got in-floor heating in the mechanics bays. And then on top of that is all of your steel, which makes a great big sandwich for them to pour the concrete in and kind of tie it all together. So a lot of them processes took place this last month and are going to continue. Next sheet is a kind of a photo of that sandwich that got made on the right. The left photo there is if you want autographs. I was actually operating the crane that day, and it was pretty fortunate that Myron members of our staff, which included more of our salaried staff, myself, Mark Korth, Chris, our office manager, was out there, and we got to sign the beam. And then they actually let me sit in the crane and pick up the beam from myself to Diana Way and set it on as being part of it, setting that beam. So that photo was actually taken during that time. That was pretty neat. The next photo, again, is overall, we're talking about weather. The contractor has been delayed throughout the winter, whether it's been an ice event, extreme cold. They are going to submit a work order request that gives them an additional, I think right now, 14 days of work to extend their contract due to their crews could not work. So I told them, if you're going to do that, you got to tell me what date, what the temperature was, whether it was a rain forecast, why people couldn't make it to work. We all know that the weather was pretty poor in February. We're going to see a request to extend the contract about 14 days at the end of this project. We're still looking at occupying the facility here in October, but there'll be about an extra couple days that they're going to request to extend. Next photo is kind of hard to see, but it's the concrete floor that got poured in the metal fabrication bay. The one below that, the big steel trusses that are going to go over the larger warehouse where the trucks are being parked in the evenings. Them actually started getting set yesterday. Next photo is, there's a mezzanine in the building where a lot of our tires are going to be stored. Additional stuff that's on stock that consumes a lot of space. The big steel structure got poured, then they brought in these precast floors that sat on top of the steel, and then they put a 3-inch concrete pour on top of that mezzanine, which is the photo you see there prior to the asphalt pour. A little bit lower, you can see the steel studs are getting placed on the administrative area. The interior walls have not been placed yet. It's just because there's so much ice and stuff still frozen to that concrete floor. Kind of wait for that to unthaw. Moving on to another photo, our salt sheds and sand sheds have been, this photo is extremely outdated as well. Our sand shed is completely done by the contractor, and now they've put on the metal roof on this big salt shed. Them 4 foot by 8 foot treated front panels are primarily all on. The photo below that, you've got our cold storage building. Wanta Builders has been doing a pretty good job with getting that structure erected. You can definitely sense the competition from this contractor working on their building to little conversations why is Wanta taking so long? And you go by Wanta and they look at Myron and they're like, why are they taking so long? You can feel the competition on site, which is good for our project as long as they do it safely. So outside of that, the dollars that we spent on the project were right around $14 million expended from the county paid towards Myron, which pays their contractor. Yesterday I got a sincere thank you from Myron for our finance department being pretty proactive in getting them paid as soon as they requested it, because then they can pay their subcontractors and the whole project just seems to be happier when people are getting paid. The earthwork out there, our crews are ready to go back out there and start working, except it's still frozen, it's very muddy. We're gonna have to be patient. Our crews have plenty of washouts to deal with over the next month. So we did put the furniture, fixtures, and equipment out for bids. Furnitures, fixtures, and equipment is anything that Waupaca County is going to handle in-house, such as stuff that's not attached to the building. So if it's in regards to billboards or walls or lights, that's all the Myron's deal. When it comes time to the non-attachable fixtures, such as chairs, desks, waste paper, baskets, I guess clocks, just all that little stuff, we put that out for bid right now, so that's out there. We're still planning to occupy it by October, and evacuate our existing facility, which right now the city of Waupaca has significant interest in it. So we'll keep moving forward with that plan and what we're going to do with our old shop, but that's for further discussions.
Questions for Casey? I do. You see, how much salt did we use, how many tons?
Well, I don't know the answer, Dick.
Okay, I'll find somebody that knows, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'd have to look at our state
Don't worry
numbers
about
and
it.
our county
I'll
numbers.
email you later on.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just on my report, I have a short note here. Yesterday, I had the unique pleasure of being on the interviewing panel for 2 openings in North Central Technical College in Marathon County. And it's always an enjoyable interviewing process they have. Just quality people that apply to be on that board and that are on that board. And Lori Wire is the president of NTC, our college up there. So impressive, what a lady. She just explained their programs, where they're trying to improve and add. For instance, they've got such a waiting list for nurses that they're trying to get more instructors in. And of course, we know there's such a shortage for nurses. Interesting enough, they're thinking about also offering some mortuary science classes up there. I went to school in Milwaukee. You can go to Milwaukee or University of Minnesota or Chicago. And not that they would get the whole degree up at their NTC, but you could take a lot of courses for men or women who want to be morticians up there and then finish it down in Milwaukee. You wouldn't have to spend all the time down there, which is really unique. So they're not going to do that for sure, but they're looking in to see if there's a big enough need. And Lord knows we're short on print directors and morticians and embalmers these days. But at any rate, Marathon County Chair Kirk Gibbs, I'm sure you all know him, what a great guy, ran a nice meeting, and your friend, Clerk Dan Kotke, is just an icon up there. Yes, I think one of Mary's close friends too, Kevin. So, yeah, that was the experience I had, and that's all I have. I'd like to have some appointments here. We need to appoint Craig Nelson as the FSA representative to Land and Water Conservation Committee. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Nygaard?
I move to approve.
Mr. Nygaard makes a motion for approval. Mr. Gerald Murphy?
Move to second that appointment.
And a second by Mr. Gerald Murphy. Any questions or discussion? Let's vote.
Do you need some help, Dennis? Is it? Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Next, we'd like to appoint Supervisor John Smith to the Committee of Aging for a 1-year term, replacing Supervisor Pullman, whose term ran out, I believe, right?
This month.
This month. Supervisor Lair?
I make a motion to accept John on the Committee of Aging.
Okay, you've heard the motion by Supervisor Lair. Supervisor Moore?
I second that motion.
And a second by Supervisor Moore. Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 24-0 with 1 abstain.
Regarding that, I just do have a shout out for Mr. John Smith. John has had some questions regarding our departments, and I give him a lot of credit. He went over to the Sheriff's Department, the Emergency Government Department, and checking out why the 911 situation is not being cared for, and he spent a lot of time there. Thank you, John, for that, getting that information. And also with Human Services. I think you spent some time up at Human Services. And that really says a lot about you. Thanks for getting that information from the professionals. Thank you, John. Announcement correspondence, well, yes, the breakfast this morning was on Mr. Zog. Thank you, Mr. Zog. And with that, I think we're at the end of the rope here. Mr. Zog?
Just one thing I wanted to bring up, seeing we don't have our newsman, the late Supervisor Penny here. I just wanted everybody to know that UW Oshkosh is the NCAA Division III basketball champ. And in our midst here, we have a few alumni here, Supervisor Murphy, myself, and recycling coordinator Taylor Sorensen.
Thank you. Supervisor Quistman?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Supervisor Quistman to adjourn. Is there a second? Is there a second? Supervisor Moore?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.